I haven't done one of these in a while either. Probably because I thought I had pretty much exhausted the subject. Even though you really can't exhaust the whole subject, it's one of those continuing things and you get new insights. But as far as the basics, I thought I had exhausted the subject. I was texting back and forth with Don Calypso. And Don Calypso is the self-described educated lame. I would like to rename this group of people the talented 10th. And he asked me a question. He said, would I describe him as an educated lame or a classic man? And a classic man is always the goal on either side, really. Whether you're the Pookie and Ray Ray, thug, educated lame, the classic man is always the goal on either side. Why? Because classic man is something that you attain, hopefully that you get to be when you're in your late 30s, maybe your 40s, because you're a complete man. And I think that's what a lot of people miss, is that a classic man is the complete man. It's the balance that I think a lot of men miss. You know, the street dudes or the guys we call street dudes have their work, but also what we call the educated lames or the talented 10th on the other side. Because you can't work on everything all at once. Very few people are like that. Very few people are born with the balance of both sides. And for the educated lames to actually get their education and get to the point where they're have their careers and whatnot, they have to work very hard in one direction. And when you work very hard in one direction, the teeter-totter gets off balance. And at some point you have to go back to the other side and balance yourself out. And everything Pookie and Ray Ray, is, for lack of a better term, does is not all bad. They might have been out of balance because they did the opposite of what the educated lames did, which they focused on social skills. And they too are out of balance. I'm saying that to say this, is that for the ELs, educated lames, classic men, talented 10th, is sometimes they grow up awkward. Sometimes it's not of their own doing. It just happens to be the way they grew up. Sometimes it's by choice because they wanted to focus in on their hobbies and their skills and their knowledge, but they grow up out of balance. They grow up with only part of themselves developed. And sometimes I think what happens is that, especially for the educated lames, they get comfortable with being lame. What I mean by being lame, being awkward, being out of step and out of sync. And they get to be so much so that they embrace it. They let that awkwardness, they let that so-called lameness define who they are. And they wear it like a badge of honor, like I'm going to be unabashedly awkward, which is noble, but it's wrong, because you're walling yourself off and you're calcifying your growth. And the point of being a human being, the point of being a man, is to bring yourself into balance. And I think the fear of social awkwardness or the fear of social rejection is so deeply seated into the psyche of, as Don Calypso calls his kind, is sometimes they calcify and they refuse to do the work. And as my late great teacher, the master teacher, the real master teacher, Dadisi Senyika, always told us, is that when we're born, we become the Word made flesh. And our journey is to go from that entity, the Word made flesh, to the Word made true, which is our true selves, which is the balance, which is the perfected self, which is the classic man. As a classic man with the balance, you're supposed to have knowledge. You're supposed to be smart. You're supposed to be learned. You're supposed to be worldly, but you're also supposed to be socially graceful. You're supposed to be dressed on point, not awkward. It's all right to geek out. It's all right to know about anime, but it's also good to know that that is just only a part of you. Being awkward is only a part of you. You embrace that. You improve that. Being awkward is only the clay that needs to be molded. And a lot of guys embrace the unmolded clay instead of shaping themselves into that classic man, into that balance, into that word made true. They get too hung up on their masculine side and not trying to understand the feminine that's in them, that inner female, which is the inner marriage. Because the inner female, your inner marriage, your inner self, your inner guidance will help you understand females, understand the world, and also understand yourself. Understand your emotions. I hear that a lot in especially young men, young classic men. They don't know how to manage their emotions because it's been walled off for far too long because the logic has dominated. And so when the emotion does come up, they get around women, they get around a social circle, and then emotion overwhelms them. They want to shrink back and hide and go back into their cave. But that's where the work is. Where the pain is where the work is. Just like when you work out, when you lift weights. If you don't feel any pain, you don't work your muscles to failure, you're not going to improve. It's the first thing they taught me as far as weightlifting. Every set has to go to failure. If you don't fail every day on every set, you don't improve. Same thing in life. Same thing in a social circle. Same thing with talking to women. If you don't fail, you're not going to improve. You shouldn't get rejected one time a day. You should get rejected 5 or 10 times a day. Because every time you get rejected, you're going to learn something. Every time you get rejected, you're going to get better at what you're doing. And it's going to get you closer to where you are. Educated lambs should know that, because whatever their endeavor is, whether it's programming, whether it's biology, whether it's chemistry, whether it's mathematics, whatever their endeavor is, you do not succeed on every experiment. The successful experiment, the repeatable experiment, is the finished product. But there's 1,000 failures behind that. Everybody looks at an experiment like as a success. No, it's not. It's a success because you've learned something, but you've also been rejected by nature because that experiment failed. That process failed. That circuit failed. That prototype failed. That experiment failed. But you learned something. Same thing with being rejected by a woman. Even a horrible rejection. You learn something. And the pain is where the growth is. Well, I have 2 left feet, I can't dance. You'll never be a ballerina, but you can get better. You don't have to be a ballerina to get out on the dance floor and dance. Whether it's ballroom, whether it's salsa, or any other kind of dance. If you don't get out there and work at it and experiment with it and fail, you'll never learn. The kids that learn how to dance, they do that move over and over and over again. They do it whether it's in line, whether they're watching TV, they do the same move over and over and over again. Because they fail. Every time they do it, they fail a little bit. It's not perfect. You're trying to get from the word made flesh to the word made true. You're trying to bring yourself into balance. You're trying to shape that awkwardness. Instead of embracing the unformed clay, you shape that unformed clay. You put on better clothes. You wear better cologne. You try to figure out what attracts women. Try to figure out what makes you socially acceptable. You try to ultimately not only control your emotions, but also the people around you. Understanding them helps you understand yourself and vice versa. It's an even flow. So yes, Don Calypso, you can become a classic man if you want to. And it's the want to, it's the will, or as Dadisi says, the image, as Kevin Samuel says, which becomes is the I, or the great one. Image yourself of what you want to be, what you would like. If you want to be awkward, if you want to be a nerd, if you want to be a educated lame, and that is the image of who you think you want to be and who you are, be that. And be comfortable in it. And embrace it. Embrace the whole nerd if you're going to be that. If you want to be the classic man, well then stop trying to be the nerd. Stop trying to be awkward. Being a classic man takes work. And you're only halfway there. Balance it out. Same thing with Pookie and Ray Ray. Being ignorant is not a virtue. Because you have social skills doesn't mean that you don't have work to do. And knowledge takes a long time to gain, as the classic man will tell you. They have work to do to gain knowledge. The classic man has work to do to gain social skills. Opposite sides of the same coin. You're trying to get to the balance point. You're trying to get to the perfected man. Stop embracing your unformed clay. Become the potter. Put yourself on the wheel. Shape and mold that clay and then put fire to it so that that shape holds. Become the vessel for your masculine and your godlike essence. Become that classic man. Become that balance. Become the word made true, or your godlike form. With that, that's all I got, brothers. This is a promised one for Don Calypso. This is BGS out, and I will see you guys on the next one. Peace.